This section right here should be just a review, really. I think we've talked about a little bit about the broker in charge and licensee relationship in one of the very early chapters, but nothing wrong with a little overview and review. But there is a difference, a very distinct difference between employees and independent contractors. So obviously, when you get your real estate license, you're going to have to be hired by a real estate brokerage company, your broker in charge, to work under their brokerage. Now, when they hire you, they have an option to hire you as an employee or an independent contractor. They can do it either way, and we can kind of make sure you understand the difference between the two. Now, I will tell you, typically nowadays, if you're a typical real estate salesperson, then you're likely going to be an independent contractor. That just seems to be the way most brokerage companies prefer to go. We're also going to be talking about some ethical responsibilities in real estate, the importance of decision making, and why the company policies will matter. That's sort of what we're going to be looking at here in this little section. But back to this employee versus independent contractor. Obviously, if you're an employee, if they decide to hire you that way, then the brokerage company will have to withhold taxes, right? Social Security, Medicare, all this stuff. But as an independent contractor, there are no tax withholdings. In essence, as an independent contractor, you will have to set aside taxes when you get paid your commission and pay the taxes yourself. So, basically, as an independent contractor, when you get that commission check after selling a house, I suggest you don't go out there and spend it all, because a pretty good percentage of it you're going to have to pay to the government in taxes, income taxes, right? So highly recommend you get in touch or talk to an accountant or somebody that can help you determine how much you need to set aside for tax purposes. You may find you have to pay these taxes quarterly. And you're having to estimate, obviously, you have to estimate how much you think you're going to make this year. And then based on that amount, now you can calculate how much you would owe in taxes, and then you'd have to pay those taxes quarterly. If you didn't make as much money as you thought you were going to make, meaning you overpaid in taxes, then you'll get a refund at the end of the year. If you underestimate what you think you're going to make, that means you're probably going to have to pay more taxes in addition to what you've already paid quarterly at the end of the year. But I highly recommend you get an accountant to kind of help you with this, okay? Because in essence, you're kind of self-employed, or going to be treated as self-employed when it comes to payroll taxes. All right, don't get yourself in trouble with this. Now, some of the requirements to even be hired as an independent contractor, the law says at least 90% of your income must come from the direct sale of real estate. Now people say, well, what if I got another job and I'm doing real estate on the side? You're saying 90% of my income's got to be real estate sales? We're just talking about money you make from the brokerage company, okay? If you got another job on the side or whatever, even though it might be a full-time job, that's not what we're talking about here. But say for example, your brokerage company paid you $100,000 this year. Well, at least 90% of that $100,000, so 90,000 of it better come from the direct sale of real estate. If they just paid you doing odds and end jobs around the office or something, which is fine, but it better not account for more than 10% of what your total income was. So again, 90% or more of your income must come from the direct sales of real estate. And then the law also requires you must have a contract. It's an independent contractor agreement, basically laying out what the policies are, what your requirements are to operate as an independent contractor for whatever brokerage company you hang your license with. It's got to be in writing. There's a little section here dealing with the statutory independent contractors, and I'm not going to try to make a big deal out of this, but there is a little bit of a difference between what real estate agents do as independent contractors and what other professions may do. And I will tell you, this has caused problems throughout. And the issue is this, because you'd have real estate agents saying, well, if I'm an independent contractor, I'm not an employee, then you can't tell me how to do my job. You can't tell me when to do this and when to do that, how to do it, and so forth. And there is a lot of truth in that, but with an exception, because you're not just an independent contractor. Real estate agents are considered statutory independent contractors. And the reason for it, the broker in charge is responsible, liable for any actions you take while operating under their brokerage. Okay? So obviously, if the broker in charge has responsibility and liability for you, they should have some say-so over what you do and how you do it. And they will. And they do this through what we call a company policy manual. I would assume most states, if not all states, require brokerages to have a written policy manual. Where it might say, I'm not going to get into all of that, but, policy manual just basically says, here's our policy, here's how we do this, here's how you do that. And not every office or brokerage company will do this the same way, whatever this is. As long as the way you're doing it complies with the law, then you're fine. Typically there's more than one way to do anything and it still be legal. It's just each company will adopt their company policy on here's how we will do this. Again, whatever this is. And then you have to do it that way. Now, when you go to hang your license with them, obviously you need to get a copy of that company's policy manual. And if there's something in that policy manual you don't like or you don't think you can live with it, then you might want to look for a different company to hang your license with. Okay? So, can the broker in charge says you must be up in the office by 8 o'clock in the morning? No, they can't set your hours. They can't determine how much you must sell and stuff like that. But what they can do is say, if you are going to be selling, if you are going to be working with clients that belong to the company, which they do, they're not yours. Remember, the agent is the broker in charge. Then we want you to do things a certain way, and you have to do it that way, right? Again, now could the company say, we require training once a quarter. We want all our agents to take a certain amount of training to make sure we're up to snuff. We're doing the right things the right way. Yes, they could have in their policy, we require quarterly training. All agents must attend it or take the training in some way, shape, or form. Nowadays it's a lot easier to do the training. You don't even have to bring them into the office necessarily. You can do like Zoom training. You could actually record the Zoom training for those that couldn't sit in live and have them go back and watch it later. But at the end of the day, the company can require a certain amount of training to ensure that you're competent in what you're doing when you're representing the company. Now again, if you don't like the idea of quarterly training, for example, maybe look for another company that does not require the training. That's all I can tell you. But the company does have the right, and in fact, typically by law, must adopt a written office policy manual that all their licensees must comply with. So for that reason, that's why we're considered statutory independent contractors, because there is a degree of legal responsibility the broker in charge has for every licensee. And therefore they have the right to make sure you're doing things the right way and the way they want you to do it. Okay? All right, I think we kind of beat that up enough. And then the next little section you see here is dealing with ethics. Now we'll tell you, there's really, I don't think you'll probably get too many or any questions on the exam dealing with ethics. However, states want you to understand, ethics does play a big role, not just in real estate, but life in general, for that matter. The kind of things you're going to be tested on are, first of all, you need to know what real estate is. It's what we've covered in the first however many chapters. And what the laws are for the state that you're going to be operating in. But we're going to spend just a couple of minutes talking about ethics, just because, it's important. One, I think it'll have a lot to do with how long you last in any business, but certainly in real estate. So, let's talk about ethics just for a little bit. We know agents, when you get your real estate license, you can practice in many different areas of real estate. There's residential, there's commercial, there's property management. There's a lot of different areas in which you might actually decide to practice. If you're being ethical, if all you've ever done is residential real estate, which is the highest percentage of what agents do, then what do you know about commercial real estate? Probably nothing. And I will tell you, in fact, I've argued this for a long time now, I think there needs to be a separate license in order to practice commercial real estate versus residential, because they're so different. They are just so different. But that's not the case. There's one real estate license, and once you're licensed, you can practice any kind of real estate you want. But can't you see where, at least ethically speaking, before you decide to engage in a type of transaction that you've never done before, you have no background in it, no experience in it, shouldn't you disclose that? I would think so. I would absolutely think so. In fact, some states may very well have actually adopted laws that require you to disclose the lack of experience in a particular type of transaction. It doesn't mean you can't gain experience, but maybe you might have to work with somebody that's been doing this for a while, or that type of transaction. Gain the knowledge, gain the experience before you just get out there by yourself trying to help somebody in if it's a commercial deal, you could be dealing with multi-million-dollar properties. I think I would want somebody that's done this before, right? Not just sold residential houses. Big difference. So be careful with there. Here we look at what some of the ethical perceptions are, and this is national that we're looking at. Some of these numbers we're looking at right here, and based on the last poll that I saw as of the date of this video recording, they do a poll typically every year, I suspect, but basically they're just asking people all across the country, which professional occupation do you think would be the most ethical? And it just seems like for several years, long as I've been looking at these polls, the most ethical occupation, according to the public, would be nurses. Nurses seem to be the most ethical. But right at the bottom of the list, the car salesman. They're right down there with Congress, I think. But anyway, So nurses typically are the highest. Car salesmen are typically at the lowest. But look where real estate agents are. 17%. Y'all, that's not much better than the car salesman. Now, why do we bring this up? Is because y'all, obviously, the public's perception about real estate agents in general, when it comes to their ethics, y'all, is not good. Now, hopefully, you'll get your license and you'll be one that makes a difference, and hopefully we can increase this number. But, y'all, unfortunately, I think the public has a reason and a right to feel that agents oftentimes act in an unethical manner. Y'all, you have to put your clients' needs, desires ahead of yours. It's not about you. Y'all, you're representing them. They're not representing you. So, y'all, you got to get the best deal for them, even though it might not be the best deal for you. And a lot of agents are not doing it that way, and that's sort of hurting the perception that we have throughout the industry. So how can we improve our reputation? Y'all, do what you're supposed to do. Is, again, put yourself aside. You're not all that, right? I'm not all that. Our job is to make sure our clients get the best deal they can get. And then things will work out for us. But when we're just looking after ourselves, that's where we get in trouble. There is the golden rule I'm sure everybody's familiar with. Y'all do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Unfortunately, I think a lot of people have changed that wording to state do unto others before they can do unto you. Obviously, that's not good. But obviously in real estate, we want to make sure we treat our clients fairly, honestly. Ethics will oftentimes overlap any legal duties and obligations we have. But sometimes our legal requirements may actually conflict with our ethics. And you're going to see an example here and just right here, right versus wrong, where occasionally we have ethical and legal dilemmas that may arise. An example, and this is a big one, when it comes to disclosure of stigmas. Now, ethically speaking, you might think, well, the buyer should know about this stigma, and I think I need to tell them. But as we've talked about in an earlier chapter, when it comes to stigmas, stigmas can be restricted in terms of the disclosure. Are we required to disclose stigmas? No. And because you're not required to disclose it, the only way you can legally disclose it is if your client tells you to disclose it, right? So they might say, I don't want that disclosed, but you're thinking in your mind, I think they need to know about this, whatever you believe the stigma may be. So now you've got this dilemma, this ethical versus legal dilemma. Unfortunately, I will tell you, you better side on the legal side, okay? I don't like it any more than anybody else, but sometimes the law, you got to comply with the law, okay? And sometimes complying with the law might interfere with what we feel like the right thing to do would be. But anyway, do the right thing, okay? Our personal values, which obviously affect our ethical decision making. You see how our values are influenced by family, religion, peers, education, experiences. And then, that influence will have an impact on how we conduct ourselves with other people. It guides our behavior and decision making, and it influences our professional ethics. I will tell you, you could have two people, one person saying, if I do such and such, that's completely, totally ethical. another person will say, absolutely not. That is totally unethical. So you got different ethical values, y'all, and again, it usually has something to do with how you were raised, y'all. What influenced your personal values? So define and live by clear values. That's the key point there. Y'all, when it comes to making ethical decisions, y'all, here's a test. Y'all, some questions you probably want to ask yourself about the decision you're getting ready to make. First of all, whatever decision you think is right, is it legal? How would it look in the news, y'all, if it were to make the news? Does it does it comply with company values, y'all, the company you're licensed with? Am I treating others fairly? And can I live with the decision? Y'all, if you're not sure about any of those or not comfortable with the answer to those questions, y'all, obviously you want to seek some further advice. But just know and be willing to accept the responsibility for any outcomes. Y'all, this is what kind of bothers me, because I see this all the time, where agents make bad decisions. They do things they shouldn't have done or said things they shouldn't have said, and then they want to hide from the responsibility. Y'all, they will not accept responsibility. Y'all, that's terrible. That's terrible. Now, look, you can make a mistake. I make mistakes. But you got to accept the responsibility for your own mistakes. You can't just say, well, sorry, oh well. No, it ain't no oh well. You caused a problem here for somebody, and you need to be responsible for that. Y'all, that's being ethical, doing the right thing, okay? And then these company policies, y'all, we already talked about that, but y'all, each company that, when they do their company policy, y'all, they need to have somewhat of a code of ethics, right? What's right? What's wrong? What can you do? What can you not do? Y'all, things like that. Y'all, this just needs to be a part of the company's policies. And I will tell you, y'all, again, when and if you choose to join the National Association of Realtors, y'all, the Realtors Association, they've got a very substantial code of ethics. And y'all, if you join the association, you must conduct yourself according to that code of ethics. And I will tell you, a lot of that is more stringent than the law is. So there are things you might can do legally, but the Realtors Association has deemed some things to be unethical. Might be legal, but we believe it's unethical, and therefore you can't do it if you are a realtor. Okay, so hopefully that helps you out with some of that stuff.